Alex Smith in Florida, you're up with Iman.
Thank you so much, Aman. This is amazing. I loved what you said about adaptive or authentic self. I never thought about it that way. I always considered it just be authentic, be who you are, and know who you are. But there is some situations where your adaptive self you need to lean on. I'm curious about my wife leads an ERN group at her company. So she's really thinking. She's in a male-dominated field in architecture and in the architecture field. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, the book is a lot about like self-sabotaging things that, women may do with each other. I'm curious to know in your career, if you had examples of what maybe subtle things men have done to sabotage women in the workplace that they may not even realize that we can, learn from, coming from their perspective, not just being a woman, but also being an immigrant yourself. I think it's so important, and I want to learn as much as I can from your perspective. So any examples or things that you can kind of point to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot I think I experienced. Some of them I was aware of, others I'm not, and that's usually how it is, I think, for a lot of women. And sometimes they don't realize it until they get home, and they're like, "Wait a minute, that was low key sexist. That was not okay." But I mean, a few examples. I think it's one is not empowering them to speak up. So really being quickly dismissive of anything a woman says, because subconsciously, or you have that unconscious bias that you think she doesn't have the greatest ideas or she doesn't know what she's doing. And it's, it comes from a lot of reasons, but I've seen that sometimes I feel like when I was in a male dominant space, especially in STEM as well, I feel like my ideas were never implemented. My ideas were never really championed. And while I was in a way given the floor in a meeting to speak up and say those, they were quickly kind of dismissed and moving on to the next person. And sometimes a male could say somewhat of a different version of what I said and would be kind of elevated and praised. And, at that point, you're like, okay, maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but most of it sometimes is really worth bringing up to your supervisor or bringing up to your maybe colleagues or whatnot. And if you feel like certain things like that are really deteriorating and discouraging you from being your best self in your workplace, I encourage every woman to go and speak up to her supervisor, or HR, anyone that they could feel like they could trust to be able to solve that. I think most often what we do is we just take it in, internalize it, and then we hope that it'll go away. And it's just not a great strategy mostly for us, because we end up internalizing and thinking that of ourselves, which is even more damaging. And again, this is where the self-sabotaging comes, is because we start feeding ourselves those same narratives that our external circumstances are giving us, and it becomes our own true identity. And we think of ourselves as, oh, my ideas are not great, I'm not even going to speak up anymore. So it gets to a point where it gradually becomes worse, where you end up damaging your own success because you've internalized it instead of speaking up about it and bringing it up to someone that is able to help you through it, or even realizing that maybe this environment is never going to change. For me to champion me as a woman, I'm just going to go look for another opportunity where that environment is more empowering. Another example for me, obviously, was when I was fundraising. I've obviously been very vocal about this, and in the media, is a lot of the time there are inappropriate comments about my physical appearance, or wanting to take me out to dinner, or asking questions that have nothing to do with what I'm there for. These are not business related questions. These are not questions relating to my pitch. So why are you asking them? And sometimes I'm like, okay, it's a compliment, I'll take it. But still, it's just inappropriate, because it makes that woman think that all she ever is to you is her appearance and her being a woman, and you trying to hit on her, as opposed to actually take what she's saying and what she's pitching seriously. So a lot of inappropriate comments that have nothing to do with business or work related issues should not ever be really, I think, an option for men to say, because it's just not the right environment for it. But a lot of men sometimes don't really realize that. And I mean, I think just also making jokes. Sometimes people are like, it's just a harmless joke, it's just nothing, I'm just kidding. but deep down, it comes from somewhere. So refraining from telling jokes that are very detrimental to women's mental health, and just her confidence and her capabilities, her competence are just off the table. That should not be something that comes up at all. And, you know, if someone is seeing this stuff coming up over and over again, then I think it's very crucial to speak up, not for herself, but also for the women in that environment, for the women that are going to come after her and work in that space. So being really mindful of these things that just should not be in work-related environments. The other thing too that I sometimes tell myself to just distinguish between, am I overthinking this? Is it just like harmless, or is this like really serious? Is, if I were a man, would that comment would have that been made, and would have that been okay? Or I asked my brother too, because I feel like my brother has been my sounding board. We were raising money at the same time. We were dealing with a lot of male powerful egos a lot of the time. And so going to him and saying, so this person said that to me, or did that, is that normal? Should I like overthink this? Or should I report this, or should I speak up about this? Having that soundboard would be great. And in the case of your wife, you know, you being kind of there for her to empower her and discuss this with her and really lead her in the right direction is very crucial as well.